we're told this is all, quote, condensation that we see in our skies. We have aircraft leaving trails at altitudes far too low, with far too low humidity, to possibly produce any trail under any circumstances, and yet we see horizon to horizon trails, silvery white skies. Everything we know we would get with geoengineering, we have. You can't turn a condensation trail on and off, even if you ignore all the data. Look up. We see these trails down 20,000 feet, sub 20,000 feet. The conditions necessary for a naturally occurring vapor trail cannot happen at those altitudes. We have film footage of these tankers spraying at altitude, military tankers, KC-10s, KC-135s, C-17 Globemasters. We have up-close photographs of retrofit nozzles mounted on aircraft spraying directly into the exhaust stream to make it look like condensation. And we have the patents for these processes. We have Senate documents, presidential documents, military documents, that these programs have been going on for about 70 years at a large scale. Every single bit of science data, from the type of the engine to the atmospheric conditions to the flight plans, everything makes clear these are not, cannot be condensation trails. From a legal standpoint, the amount of data we have right now is enough to prove beyond any reasonable shadow of a doubt that these programs are real and ongoing. The effort to try to cast doubt on this issue is immense. It's up to the public to start thinking for themselves and doing a little investigation. So many roads lead directly back to climate engineering, and we are nearing critical mass, I would argue. And once we reach that point, there'll be a shockwave around the globe as the entire planet, the entire population realizes they've been irreparably harmed by governments that they thought were there to protect them. That day is coming. What is geoengineering? Geoengineering means climate engineering and climate mitigation. It means to play God with the weather. The primary methods of engineering the climate is to fill the atmosphere with light scattering particulates that are sprayed from the back of jet aircraft. We know many of these particulates are heavy metals. We know that from testing from around the globe and patents as well. With geoengineering, a primary method of solar radiation management. The stated purpose is to block some of the sun's incoming thermal radiation to try to slow down the greenhouse effect that's happening on our planet from the buildup of greenhouse gases. So we have aircraft dispersing light scattering particles all over the globe. It's creating a condition that's termed global dimming. We know that fully 25 to 30% of the sun's direct rays that reached the planet 5 decades ago no longer do. Think about that, 25 to 30%. These particulates, when they settle down to the sea surface, are then utilized for ocean fertilization. To try to force the ocean to absorb yet more CO2 to take it out of the atmosphere, which causes cataclysmic effects in the ocean, but those behind these programs seem to care not for the consequences of what they do. So we have climate engineering to try to block some of the sun's incoming thermal radiation. We have those same materials then settling down to the sea surface, becoming ocean fertilization materials. And all these are causing a catastrophe of downstream consequences that are truly beginning to manifest on our planet. This is an issue that most, when I started this endeavor, were completely unaware of. I have a background in renewable energy with Bechtel Power, which is a very dubious company, like Halliburton, for those who know who Halliburton is. And I left Bechtel at a young age because of things I saw. I've never worked for anybody since. I refused to participate in that sort of company. And when I moved to the Pacific Northwest and built an off-grid home, solar, wind, and hydro, my home was on the cover of the world's largest renewable energy magazine. Shortly after moving in, I was losing massive amounts of my solar power uptake from whatever these aircraft were leaving behind. I mean, I would lose 60, 70, 80% of my solar PV uptake. That's an immense amount, and there's no chance that's from condensation, no chance at all. So I began to research, found a mountain of data on geoengineering, climate engineering, solar radiation management. I researched the primary elements in some of the patents relating to these programs. I began to test my precipitation. I hoped I would not find these materials in my rain, because I certainly knew that I would have to face this issue. I did, from an initial rain test of 7 parts per billion of aluminum, which was high, given my filtered, forested location, away from industry, away from any sort of other contamination. I continued to test over the next 18 months. I had escalations of aluminum in my rain almost 50,000% from that original baseline, up to nearly 3,450 parts per billion. In that 18 months of research, the immensity of the data that was available and the continued escalation of the toxic heavy metals in the precipitation made clear that these programs were real, ongoing, catastrophic, and I simply was faced with the choice to continue on as if it wasn't going on, which I can't do, or to do what needed to be done, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm simply trying to play my part in this, to bring this to light. I could not look my children in the eye without focusing everything I had on these programs. I've been at it ever since, about 14 years now, something in that realm. It all leads back to the money. We can trace all roads back to the central bankers, those who print the money, control militaries, they control countries, they control everything down the ladder. They can print whatever they need for whatever they want. It's above governments, above elected officials, and all the people involved, from academia to the military, who are being told they're engaged in some planetary saving endeavor. That's a complete lie. And it's up to those people to start investigating what they're doing and what it's doing to the planet. And that's a complex answer to that question. Too many people try to put it in one box to make it a this or that answer. It's this and that and many other things. You have stated on Senate documents the stated goal of the U.S. government and multiple agencies in the U.S. government. In these documents, they state their goal of deciding where it rained too much, where it didn't rain enough, as if it's their choice to decide. As you interfere with the climate system, you do damage. And there are many other sources of anthropogenic damage as well. As that damage has mounted and manifested, now you have a great portion of geoengineering is the attempt to hide the damage already done from the population as long as possible, while inflicting yet more damage in the process. We have weather warfare. We have the stated goal of not just the U.S. military, but others around the globe to, quote, own the weather for military purposes, owning the weather as a, quote, force multiplier. Why would they not want to control the weather when they can win a war without firing a shot, when they can win a war without another country even knowing they went to war? Geoengineering is the pharmaceutical cure for planet Earth. The military-industrial complex, keep business as usual as long as possible, hide it from the population as long as possible, use it as a weapon as long as possible. They're not about to let go. There are many layers to the why question, and people need to not try to put it in one box. But I want to state this, there is no benevolence in these programs. And anything we post, we can prove, we can back it up. Geoengineeringwatch.org is a data repository. We're non-political. We simply want to have the most credible site possible for people to draw upon to help wake others up. The site was started in 2009, and we are now experiencing about 20,000 to 25,000 visitors a day. What I have tried to do at geoengineeringwatch.org and tried to encourage other very committed activists to do is to utilize the science terms when trying to convey this issue to others, so that when people search this issue online, when they look for data, they find solid, credible science data and not conspiracy theory and hoax. Thus, semantics matter. If we use the science terms, climate engineering, geoengineering, solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection, if we know and use the science terms, people will search and find science data. When people use the term chemtrails, which many people are bent on using that term, certainly it's a descriptive term, but it is a non-science term that by design leads people to definitions of conspiracy theory and hoax, and that's as far as most people get. What I've tried to do, and with the help of other activists that also see the merit in taking that science approach, is to gain credibility, and credibility that's necessary to build bridges with those from the climate science community who know this is going on, but are afraid to speak out and certainly afraid to associate with any other groups or movements that are not standing on solid science. Absolutely, there's absolutely proof. To start with, I would ask people to use their sense of reason, use their own power of observation, to look up, to simply look up. How come we can have a grid pattern in our skies one day and nothing the next? Why do we have massive trails in our skies during the daytime, and most cases at night, 10, 11, 12 at night, you can see aircraft leaving nothing in the sky? Even if you ignore all the data, look up and ask yourself how you could possibly turn a condensation trail on and off. How you could possibly, if atmospheric conditions were creating this, how could you possibly have a trail from horizon to horizon next to an aircraft leaving virtually nothing? We see these trails down 20,000 feet, sub 20,000 feet. The conditions necessary for a naturally occurring vapor trail cannot happen at those altitudes in the temperature range we see it happening in. We can't have that kind of condensation, especially behind a high bypass turbofan jet engine, especially at the altitudes we're at. We have tutorials on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org with animations to show what this fan is about. That's the engine that's fitted on all commercial tankers and all military aircraft. That's a jet-powered fan. By design, it's nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail, except under the most extreme circumstances. 85% of the air that passes through it is non-combusted. Many have argued that we have an increase in jet air traffic, so we should see more trails. But what we're seeing are these trails in locations where there is no commercial traffic. We had a FAA flight GPS tracking done at the request of a congressional rep that showed massive loops taking place over the whole Pacific West Coast of these aircraft spraying. And at the altitudes we see them at now, we see these trails down 20,000 feet, sub 20,000 feet. In every place we would expect to see this fallout, we see it. It's bioavailable. These particulates are so small, they're absorbed in everything from plant life. They enter straight through our lung lining into our bloodstream where they adhere to cell receptors like a plaque. The snow off the side of Mount Shasta, thought to be a pristine water source. Snow samples off the side of Mount Shasta, as tested at the state certified lab by a former Forest Service biologist, showed 61,000 parts per billion of aluminum. Highly toxic snow. Many times more aluminum in the snow than in the soil beneath the snow. We have precipitation tests, snow tests. Every human test subject we test, hair, blood, or urine, has off-the-chart levels of aluminum and barium and strontium, metals named in climate engineering patents, in their system. Patents like stratospheric Welsbach seeding for reduction of global warming, assigned to Hughes Aircraft in 1991. We have patents for other forms of artificial cloud formation. The list is so immensely long and complicated, we simply encourage people to look at it. We have the entire list posted. And individuals who don't want to face this issue try to claim that because aluminum is so abundant in the environment, 8% of the Earth's strata, we should see it everywhere, and that's a blatant lie. Aluminum does not exist in the environment in free form naturally. Aluminum can't exist in that state unless it's been mined and refined and sprayed, period. And now it is showing up in free form everywhere. And on top of all this, congressional documents, presidential documents, military documents, patents. How much proof do we need? Historical fact, weather warfare going on around the globe, Project Popeye, Project Storm Fury. We have mountains of facts to prove beyond any reasonable doubt these programs are absolutely real and ongoing, causing cataclysmic damage to the planet and our health. From a legal standpoint, the amount of data we have right now is enough to prove beyond any reasonable shadow of a doubt that these programs are real and ongoing. A legal suit has already been filed in Canada. A legal suit is pending and close to being filed in the US. And with that filing, our attorneys will prove that this heavy metal contamination is real, it exists, agencies have not disclosed it to the public, and the public has a right to know. Does the government have a right to conduct these programs over populations? If we move back to a UN treaty in 1976 that was passed forbidding weather manipulation during wartime, in that treaty, a country's own right to experiment on their own populations was not forbidden. So we have loopholes in the system, especially in regard to national security, where countries are not forbidden to conduct such programs over their own populations. The U.S. military leaders have stated on the record the greatest and most immediate threat to U.S. national security is the disintegrating climate. Do we really believe that these people in the military-industrial complex are going to ask our permission to intervene with the climate? In the course of our legal proceedings on the climate engineering issue, do our attorneys expect the national security card to be played as this issue begins to come to light? Yes, they do. But is that not an admission that these programs are going on? It is.